Hello there, my name is Jacqueline Hanna, and I'm the Assistant Director at Food Co-op Initiative, and you're joining us for our video on Vision, from Input to Vision, a deeper dive on the vision cornerstone of the 4 and 3 development model. And this is the third video in a series of 4. Just a little bit about us at Food Co-op Initiative. We are currently providing support and resources for over 120 communities across the nation that are trying to start their own food co-ops, from Sitka, Alaska to Boston, Massachusetts. And we have actually supported over 80 co-ops that have already opened in the last decade as new food co-ops all across the nation. We exist to support startup food co-ops at every stage of development. Whether you're having your first conversation with a friend or two about the possibility of starting a food co-op in your community, or you're opening your doors in just a couple months, we can help. Give us a call at any time. You see our number there and our email on the screen. You can sign up for our mailing list at our website. Make sure you check that out at foodcoopinitiative.coop.coop. And all of our resources on that website and most of our support services are free to you. We want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors that make it possible for so many of our resources and so much of our support to be free. We get financial support from the USDA, the National Cooperative Bank, National Cooperative Grocers, the Cooperative Foundation, Cooperative Fund of New England, and from dozens of mature food co-ops all over the US. Thank you for making our work supporting the future of food cooperation possible. Today's video is Vision, from Input to Vision. It's part of our 4-part series. The first part was Components of Vision, where we talked about what are the pieces that make up vision so we know how to approach building our vision. Part 2 was Vision Process, how we get the input from our owners and community and how we run a process with that input to build our vision, one that really reflects our community. Today, we're talking about how to take that raw input from the community and turn it into vision. This was actually requested by you startups. We sent out, we already planning part 1 and part 2 and what is now part 4, which is putting that new vision to work in a way that really adds energy and dynamicism to your project and moves it forward. But there was a request to go a little more in depth about how we're going to use that raw input information to build a vision that really reflects that input and honors that input. So we're going to dive into that today based on your requests. So just a little quick review, as we always do at the beginning of these vision videos. We are working with the 4 and 3 development model. This is a model that was developed by CDS Consulting, as well as Cooperative Development Services and FCI, Food Co-op Initiative, that is taken from the experience of working with dozens and dozens of startup food co-ops and seeing some patterns and best practices about how new startup food co-ops develop. So if you haven't heard of the 4 and 3 model or don't know it very well, or this image on the screen is a little confusing to you, then check out our free videos on the 4 and 3 model. They really are the basis for your future success. There are 2 videos, in part 1 and part 2. You'll see them there on the screen, and those are available for free on our YouTube channel. Today, we'll be focusing on one of the cornerstones known as vision, that one there in the upper left. So the vision cornerstone articulates the hopes and dreams of your co-op community. To learn more about it in the broad sense and how it affects your co-op throughout its development, take a look at our overview video called Creating a Vision, and that's at the CDS Consulting Library. Our partners at CDS Consulting house that there on their library. There's also some other terrific free resources there about how to develop your startup food co-op. So today, let's dive into vision, from input to an actual vision. So in the last video, our second video on input processes and vision process, you collected feedback from your key stakeholders. If you were in stage 1, that meant key community members, farmers, early owners. If you were in stage 2 development, referencing again the 4 and 3 model, if you were in stage 2 development, this meant an actual feedback process from your owners. You took this feedback, and as a leadership team, whether that is a steering committee in stage 1 or an elected board of directors, you boiled this information down as part of that process with the people who gave you input. So Down here we see just some raw input. This is from an actual visioning input session with a co-op I worked with. Things from local food all year round, accessible every day. Things that were part of their vision was a fresh meat case with local clean meat, and things like local producer microloans. And these were on a larger list of all their different ideas and visions for what could be part of their co-op that was then boiled down. The boiling down process is when you look at all this input that people have given and see themes. And we talked about this in the second video. It was actually toward the end of the input process, the vision process video. So go back and review that if you'd like. This was just a quick refresher. See, we take all of this information and look at it and go, what's the theme we're seeing? The theme in this one, they came out was building a more robust, just local food system everyone can access. So this is from a large sheet of input. They took these 7, 8 pieces of the input and said, we're going to boil them we're going to boil them down to this one key concept that embodies all of them. So that was part of the work from our second video on vision process. Here are the actual list of all the vision input, or most of the vision input they got in this process with this co-op I worked with. So this is a list. People just said, what's your vision? And they said, local food all year round, accessible every day. And people just kept throwing out ideas, comments, feedback, until we couldn't think of anything more to add to the list. And this isn't pragmatic feedback. This is just broad. What's your vision for your co-op? Now remember, the input process can be with key stakeholders and your steering committee in stage 1, or it could have been an owner process once you have hundreds of owners in stage 2. So this is just a list from one co-op I worked with, and then as part of that process we outlined in the second video, you then take this list and give everybody so many votes, usually 3, some groups go as high as 5, this group went 3, and they're only allowed to pick the 3 pieces of vision that have been listed by the group that they're most excited and most passionate about. So it doesn't mean they don't love everything on this list, but what are the key things that they hope from this list the co-op will embody that is really core to them? So this is part of how we look for those themes that are going to help us turn into mission, core values, and vision. So we look through the star process and we see there were 16 votes, 16 stars that aligned with things that all had one category in common, and that was local food and farms. We saw a secondary theme when we found 10 votes for ideas that were all related to building local economy, from clearly strengthening local economy to jobs, to microloans to farms, which strengthens local economy, helping new food businesses start, which helps local economy. And so the primary theme ended up being local food and farms. And then there was a clear secondary theme that was supporting and growing our local economy. Now, that was that group. Every startup food co-op group that I've had the honor of doing a vision process with comes up with a unique and distinct vision that suits their community. And there's actually 7 to 8 major themes that tend to arise. Those were just 2 possibilities. Local foods and farms may not be part of the core vision for your startup food co-op if one of your main goals is just to get clean food and healthy food access into a community that hasn't had a grocery store for a long time. Other neighborhoods and communities that are starting food co-ops have many grocery stores, but little access to an outlet. So your vision is going to be unique and distinct. That was just one example. But from that visioning process that we talked about in the second video that we did, you're looking for 1 to 3 core vision themes. You're going to go down that list and see where all the votes were and see what you can boil down, or that boil down process, and combine them into big key ideas. For our sample group that we just reviewed their input process, back one slide please, the key ideas were local farms and local food, and strengthening the local economy. They're going to take just those 2. There were a couple other places we could have found themes, but they just didn't have enough votes to really rise to the top. Now that those ideals will be lost in the work they actually do, but they won't be part of the core mission and values. So again, from our sample group, local farms, local food, so I gave them a pretend name for this one. They developed a mission from these 2 core ideas. This is a mission statement, remember, which is why we exist. If you're interested in learning more about the parts of vision That's actually in our first video, the components of vision. The three components are mission, core values, and vision. So this is the mission, why we exist. It's broad, it's inspiring, it's not highly specific, yet it's exciting. So for them, from those two main themes, from their input process, they developed Center Co-op Market, growing our robust local food system that strengthens our local economy in Center County. Notice that in this, they defined who they're serving, brought that up in the second video as well. Make sure we do have some information about who you're serving. If we just say we're growing a robust local food system that strengthens our local economy, you could mean your whole state, you could mean just your city, you could mean a 5-county area. Nobody really knows who you're serving. So make sure that makes it into the mission. So we have a mission statement that came from boiling down the input process, right? Now, how will we accomplish this mission? That's core values. So a lot of text here just to show you the process. So we have up at the top in the green box their mission statement, and then looking at that on the right is all the input again, all the input statements from their focus group that did the input about the vision, and all there's just raw data. And we said, how do you turn on to core values? So you might not want to do this with me right this second and read every single piece of input. You might want to freeze this frame sometime later if you want to see how they boiled it down. But again, they boiled down the mission from core themes they found in this list here. And then they said, how did people want us to do it? We see themes. Running a fiscally and environmentally sustainable cooperative grocery store. The grocery store piece usually ends up in core values rather than mission, because the co-op the mission is supposed to be big enough, they could be addressed multiple ways. The core values is how we're going to address it. We're going to address it through a grocery store that is fiscally and environmentally sound. In the case of this organization, they picked that because to be able to have a real continuous effect on their local economy, they had themselves to be fiscally solvent and producing income that could go back into the community. And then they wanted to tie in that little bit of a hint of environmental focus that they found in the feedback session that didn't end up being such a core idea that it ended up in the mission statement, but it could show up in the core values of how they would execute on that mission. They then talked about developing deep relationships with local farms and producers, prioritizing their products in our co-op. This really embodies, so not only are we going to grow a robust local food system, but the specific way we'll do that. We could do it through a farmer's market. We could do it through a buying club, but we're going to do it by developing deep relationships and prioritizing their products in our store. And then how else are they going to execute on the mission? Create a space where community comes together, learns together, and enjoys food together. This takes in a little bit of a theme that's in their feedback on the right that they got from their owners, that there's kind of a little bit of an education theme. We want to make healthy food available and information and knowledge on healthy food. We want kids to taste food. There's this kind of, we want to center together around education and food experiences. So they've said this is part of the way that we'll execute our mission. We'll create a space where community comes together to learn and enjoy food. And then the last one seemed really core, if we're going to build a strong local economy, that we offer strong local jobs where staff has a voice. They really heard in this input process that lots of owners were very concerned about how staff was treated and we created good jobs. So when we had do core values, as you heard in video number 1 about these component pieces, only 3 to 4 core values, okay? So we have their mission statement and core values, which was boiled down from that input process. But the question is, who does this work? We have all this raw data from the input process. It could take us, we could have a whole board retreat just trying to boil it down into a mission statement and core values, right? So delegate. No matter if you're in stage 1 or doing the stage 2 process that I've outlined in the last 2 videos, don't do all of this boiling down together. You came up with the core themes, but not all the work should be done together. Delegate and empower. Create a task team, which is a group that the board has empowered of 1 to 3 people who have one singular task that they are doing on the board's behalf. Do drafts together. You can do a quick draft of the vision as a team. Don't try to make it perfect. And do a list together of maybe a few focused areas for those core values. And actually, this should say mission. Do try to draft a mission statement So set a time limit. Don't do this in more than 30 minutes. This is not a final version, and don't be dickering over the right word. But what could the mission statement sound like based on the raw input we're looking at? And what are a couple of the obvious ways they want us to execute on that? You're going to hand that 20 to 30 minutes worth of thinking and work to the task team you've delegated to. The task team will be assigned to put together a draft mission and core values based on that boiling down process and that feedback. And you will set a time limit, I'd say, for when they're going to bring it back to the full team. So maybe they'll bring it to the next board meeting. You'll then review the task team's work, spend 10 minutes suggesting any real necessary changes or tweaks. You'll ratify this and you'll move forward. And the reason I bring this up, and you see me saying 10 minutes here, 30 minutes here, is please don't spend days and days on this. Don't argue about the exact word use. What we've found again and again is that what rises to the top in the beginning of the process is the most important, and that your vision, mission, and core values are living things. They can be adjusted and changed as time goes on if necessary. It's just important for us to have a version that speaks to us, that speaks to the input we got, and moves us forward, that we don't spend weeks and weeks and weeks on this. So one thing I didn't want to lose in this, when you asked me to talk about how are we going to take all this raw input that we just did, this very cooperative process where we get lots of voices involved and then boil down the information they give us, how are we going to then, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to make it into an actual mission and core values? And then how are we going to communicate back to the folks who gave us input? I was really excited to hear this question because that's so co-op. Yay, you guys. We want to not only ask for input, but we want to use it respectfully and give feedback. Now remember, asking for input does not mean we decide things by consensus, or that all 100 members or 200 or 500 members get to be sitting at the table finalizing the mission. That's why they elected a board or a steering committee, empowered steering committee. So, but we do want to communicate back to them that really this was a full cooperative process where their voices were taken in and used to create a mission that will drive us forward. So how are we going to communicate now that we've created a mission and core values? We're going to thank. In stage one, please send out a brief letter from your leadership team, whether that's a steering committee or a board, thanking the key stakeholder. Remember, we interviewed maybe up to a couple dozen key stakeholders if you did a stage one process, and this is outlined in video number 2. We interviewed them for their input on our mission and what we could accomplish in the community. We're going to make sure we remind them that we appreciated that input, and not only appreciated it, but did something with it. So you'll send out a brief letter to all of those key stakeholders that participated in your process. Then you'll write up a brief outline of your process, that you gathered input from over whatever it was, 24 key stakeholders. Use that input to hold a leadership visioning session with the steering committee or the board. And with your input, we formed the following. Tell them what your new mission and core values are. That's the outcome. And then tell them what you're going to do with it. Tell them how this will guide all future board decisions. It'll be on your website and your newsletter. So your input has been turned into this mission and core values that will be at the center of everything we do as we build our co-op together. Tell them that they're valued and important. If you're in stage 2, just a little bit different, very similar. But this one, if you had a stage 2 process, you had a bunch of owners participating, hopefully. Again, that process outlined in the second vision video on vision process. So we want to thank them, but we're not going to send out a handwritten letter, a hand-signed letter to every single owner. Instead, we will send out an email to all the owners who came to the event, who actually participated, and we'll let them know, same thing, with a quick thank you, an outline of the process that was used. Please include photos. Please tell me you took photos. Take photos at your input sessions. They're so valuable. They really reflect the co-op process back to your owners so they can see that sense of community and input and that real people participated in the process. And then you will announce, once you've sent this letter to the participants, you will announce using social media, press releases, this great cooperative process you went through and the results, this new mission and core values. You can definitely turn that into a press release and never lose the opportunity to talk about your co-op with the press. But most importantly, we're communicating through social media, through your newsletter, on your website to owners what the mission and core values are, and that a cooperative process was used that really reflects the community to create that mission statement and core values. That's just a little bit about how we're going to take that raw input and turn it into something substantial and wrap up that process. Thank you so much to those of you who sent in the questions about how to do that so I could tighten that up for you. The last video in this series will be putting your new vision to work, or your refined vision if you're in stage 2. You've now got this tight, excellent, exciting mission and core values. And are they just going to sit on your website now? No. No, that would be the exact wrong use. A really terrific mission and core values drives your co-op forward, gets people excited, is part of your communication, is part of your social media, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can do that to really drive your process forward as a developing co-op. So that video will be coming out in December. Look for that. We will post it at YouTube and on our social media. Thanks so much for watching today. If you have any questions about the material in this video, please do contact us. We're here to help. Our number is right there on the screen, as well as my personal email address. If you want to talk in any more depth about any of the aspects of what was shared here today. Thanks for watching.